he's scarring the landscape and at the same time helping to remediate. Go on ahead and a few at a time can go in.
Can we go there? Looks unstable, right? I don't know. Are we allowed to go in?
Yeah, just, I don't want a crowd in there, you know?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But you are. A couple at a time.
Cutting in front of you. It's so mean. Oh!
I said like, you know, we wouldn't go past 4. Okay, yeah, great. But that might be a long time to be out. So.
Yeah, it's hot today.
Y'all see the frogs? No, actually.
Oh, well, no, it's the frogs out there.
Is the pump working in there?
It should be. I don't know if it's.
Do you hear it?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That was very expensive.
I've heard about that.
Nickel and diming me.
There's frogs in there. Frogs in the water.
Do you all hear me out there in here? So there's a 20. The reason why I said that, you know, if there's something here that you want to spend more time with, I encourage you to do so, because there's there are 20 installations, 18 artists and groups, and we're gonna, you know, I'm gonna have to cut. Like some of these pieces really require like a bigger investment. I mean, they all do. This is kind of a fun one because there's frogs to watch. So I'm gonna have to cut some of these things short. But please come back and see the work. When we were, I worked with an assistant curator, Erin Antonak, who was in your program I guess she graduated last year. She's currently a curator at a museum in Mississippi. And when we were conceptualizing the show and kind of trying to understand placement, and we used a framework that I found really useful, and you might as well. We thought of this stretch, this corridor, which feels like it's a space in transition. It's very narrow. We thought of this as the danger zone. That's how we thought of it between the two of us. A place where we would really highlight, we would bring in works that highlight precarity and feelings of danger. And one of the first artists that I thought of with regard to that experience really is Sam Spillman, who was a home builder and then moved into sculptural practice, and all of his works are these kinds of interior spaces that force an experience. I really like that because they're like they're very controlling. You know, they really control your. Yeah, it's like you've entered this little space. So what he's done here is he's taken an old Ukrainian bunk house from Michael Asbill's property, and he's reconstructed it here over this pond. When we were initially talking about his piece, we were talking about placement, and I told him that I really wanted people to feel uneasy. And he said, well, then we got to build it over the pond. we're gonna make a hole in the ground, and it's gonna be slanted. There's gonna be a hole in the roof, and it's gonna be kind of falling apart. And I said, okay. It became the most controversial piece in the show when it came to the neighbors, who really loved the pond and loved to sit next to this like serene pond. But I think that what the piece effectively does is reframe the pond from this like place of serenity to a place of kind of unease. Maybe like a kind of you know, there's another aspect of the piece which is interesting too, which is that like these are all utopian socialist Ukrainian youth camps, and I think he's been asking this question in this piece. You know, what happens when that decays? Like what's on the other side of that? What happens when that ideology gets old? There's so many questions in this space, but let's move on. You have any questions about it? Any thoughts?
Is it gonna stay or it's gonna be taken down?
All got to be taken down.
Oh, that's a shame because like the frogs, I feel like it will disturb them.
It's true though.
Well, it's funny because that was the argument the neighbors made for not having it here, that it would disturb the frogs. And the fact is though, and I've kind of made my peace with it, that when you're making a show, you're like saying something, and it's always good to like stop saying something and let someone else speak. You know what I mean? So I've kind of made my peace with it. Like when it's over, we'll clean it up, and we'll let the next thing happen. You know?
Just be careful when you clean it up.
I know, right? The paint chips and everything. But that's
Stepping
why.
on frogs.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes, that too. Yeah, for sure. No, I mean we've been very cautious. Like you know.
It's been a thing though.
It
When
has
we
been
transitioned from the last show to this show,
Yeah.
I mean, we had to kind of pull things out and make a lot of things
Yeah.
have to move.
Yeah.
So
Right, there was compose to decompose, had to be taken apart.
partially.
Partially. All right, let's move on. Oh, one thing I want to mention. You'll probably notice these like pillars of earth. You'll see them back here. And there was a few more. There's one by the entrance. Sorry. And just keep those in mind.
Are they termites?
No, they're works by our very own Emilie Houssart. Well, so that grew pretty quick.
Yep.
All right. Jeez. All right. So these are works by Eileen Wold. There are two works here. There's you'll see the security domes around here, and you'll see these silver sticks, poles. We could talk about the security domes first, but these are two separate pieces that kind of are in conversation with each other. These security domes are meant to highlight a kind of what is a self-reflection, but not in like a good way. Like a
Surveillance.
Yeah.
Well, surveillance is certainly the thing, but it's a feeling of being watched almost. But that you're able to see yourself from a variety of different angles. They're meant to mimic droplets coming down the tree in a sense. But at the same time, the feeling of being watched is important to her in that piece. And in this one, she's been thinking quite a lot over the last bunch of years about this one statistic, which is that every gallon of gas you burn, in order to recapture that carbon, you have to have 1 square meter of old-growth forest. And so she's been really thinking about how to physicalize that statistic. And in this case, she's done that by creating by basically setting out 3 square meters. There was once a path that led around here from one to the other, but it's really been overgrown. And each of these poles has a kind of dichotomy on written on them on either side. So you'll see for here there'll be disruption and restoration, expansion and reduction, decomposition and growth, and adaptation and extinction. And she's really thinking about these as a kind of meditative space. But I mean, meditative within the context of these security domes, which I find very interesting.
Some of them. They're beautiful.
So this is a work by the artist Alex Young. And his assistant, John Stowe. Just playing. You guys can come in, and you should come in, because this is a piece that really requires looking closely. Close looking.
Is this thing on?
It is. You can walk around it. Kind of beautiful. You want to give it a go?
Yeah. So, this is a. I just spelled it. This is a collaboration between myself and a really brilliant mad scientist, artist, inventor, Alex Young. And we became really interested in like the deep histories of plants in the region, and especially how certain plants get classified as native versus invasive, which is a really problematic category, not just because it's a category that was invented by the Nazis, but also because it's really arbitrary. About 70% of all the flora in the Hudson Valley came with colonizers, right? So to presume that there's like some sort of native plant that belongs here is to draw a line of identification and to put up a border and essentially say these beings belong and these other ones don't belong. Hit the road. So that type of thinking is something that was really curious to us. But it's not to say that, of course, there's plants that need to be managed, right, really carefully, because they're cosmopolitan, they spread with human beings. Like whenever human beings go somewhere, they always bring all of their companion species. They never go alone. And some of the plants we bring with us are rapid colonizers, like garlic mustard, which will change soil chemistry, making it pretty much impossible for other plants to live around it. And that little dying thing you see up here, that's garlic mustard. It's just dying away because that's it's on a 2-year cycle. It's now that it's gone to seed, it'll wither off and die sort of naturally. But also things like the stilt grass, the Japanese stilt grass here, which spreads really quickly. It's all over the place and it usurps some of the other plants. But certain plants that are classified as being invasive actually naturalize and get along quite well with others. So those are the questions that got us really interested in studying them. And we envision this as a laboratory where we could come together, grow these plants, and test out their various applications. So we're constantly coming back here and experimenting with it. So how it works, though, as an object, and I should say we're really interested too in aesthetics and making something that's beautiful and moving and has a real deep sensual and tactile quality in a way that can't really be recognized or identified. It's just it's an alien object that just lands, right? That doesn't seem to fit any clear category of nature, culture, beautiful, ugly, dystopian, utopian, right? It sort of crosses all of those, which is more interesting to us because it's better at posing questions. So my collaborator Alex has been working with a number of different research institutes that are involved in coming up with more sustainable ways to create solar panels. So solar energy is fantastic, it's renewable, but it relies on a lot of rare minerals that are mined from conflict zones, usually in Africa. So it's a as a sustainable technology, it's really fantastic, but its material production is deeply problematic. So there's research into other ways to create solar panels, and it turns out that a lot of berry dyes can be photoreactive, so they can essentially generate electrons. I'm oversimplifying it. Alex knows this, my collaborator knows this stuff much better, and he would yell at me for not explaining it in detail. But the tower you see there is a solar array, and there's little packets that have pokeweed berry dye in it. So when the sun hits it, that generates a current that then charges a battery, which is on a timer, and then this is a closed hydroponic system that waters these plants. I do have to come by and just top off the water and dose it with some plant food, essentially.